Well, Joe Biden is less than an hour from landing in Israel, but he's pulled out of his trip to Jordan after the king cancelled his planned summit, where he was set to host the American, Egyptian and Palestinian leaders to discuss a way out of the Israeli conflict. The Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas had earlier dropped out in protest to the Gaza hospital explosion, for which he blames Israel, and Israel, of course, blames Palestine. Well, joining me now is writer and former senior intelligence analyst Paul Monk. Paul, what's your take? Who bombed this hospital?
Oh, Caleb, it would be out of place for me to speculate with any confidence at all. We need to bear in mind, as you more or less hinted a few minutes ago, that in war, a great many things occur that nobody specifically intended. And it's hard to believe that either party had a reason to kill 500 people in a hospital. So one hopes that it was a military accident. But like yourself, I'd be inclined to say, well, let's hope the truth comes out and let's hope it's not devastating.
Well, if it were to be that Palestine had done this itself, or Hamas had done this itself, it probably wouldn't come as a great surprise, because we know that Hamas uses human shields. It has instructed people to stay in Gaza in the hope that it makes life more difficult for Israel. But suppose it were to be an attack by Israel on a hospital. What would that do to Israel's wider pursuit in the global community if it were found that they were capable of doing such a thing?
Well, there have been people for many years alleging that Israel has done such things, mostly on a small scale, in its long-running war with both Hamas and Hezbollah, and on a smaller scale, even in the West Bank. And so you can fully expect such people to jump up and say, of course it's Israel. Why would Hamas do that to its own hospital? If it could be shown that this was an act by the Israeli military, indeed that it was a planned act, then there would be a great deal of shock and horror in much wider circles. And I'd certainly be among those both shocked and horrified. What Israel needs at the moment, of course, is the support precisely of those among us who are most inclined to be shocked at the very idea. So let's hope fervently that it was certainly not Israel.
This cancelled summit, what sort of implications will this have for the US's relations with Arab nations?
Well, it's very striking that Biden has come out and said we're four square behind Israel. And of course, it's not a mystery given what was done in southern Israel. Nobody with any common sense, and there's unfortunately quite a few lacking it seems, would do anything but condemn in the most, condign terms the massacre of about 1,300 civilians and the brutal things that were done to many of them, women, children, elderly people. It's just absolutely horrifying. So morally and psychologically, it's not surprising that Biden would take the stand that he has. But we've already seen that that has implications, because parties other than Hamas, who have mixed views of Israel, should we say, if not hostile ones, wanted to contain this conflict, and the US stepping in and saying we're right there with Israel has put many of their backs up, as we've seen. And of course, behind the scenes, never about to be involved in that summit in Amman, is Tehran. And Tehran is the real wild card in this whole process.
Yeah, I think the US was sort of backed into a corner, though. I mean, if they didn't back Israel, it would be incredibly damaging for them, Israel being the only democracy that exists in the Middle East. It's kind of something that we have to defend at all costs to some respect. Speaking of lack of democracy, President Xi in China has welcomed the leaders of Kazakhstan and Ethiopia as it puts on the charm offensive for its Belt and Road initiative. Now, you might say that courting developing countries could be somewhat at odds with growing China's power. We know that generally they've gone around trying to essentially buy up small Pacific islands with debt diplomacy. But with each country that it signs up to this global infrastructure and investment scheme, and don't forget Daniel Andrews tried to sign Victoria up to it too, that's of course one less vote for Taiwan at the UN, and it's one less Western ally, right?
Well, it is, although it must be said that China isn't winning a lot of real friends through the Belt and Road Initiative. One could say that it really, although it's drawn a number of countries into what appear to be compromising debts, which is causing some pushback, you could say that its only real allies are countries like Cambodia, North Korea, Myanmar, all tin pot dictatorships. The wealthy countries in the world have all woken up to China's game. The Europeans, the East Asian prosperous and democratic states, the North Americans, ourselves. So Xi Jinping is up against it in terms of his soft power campaign, I would say. But the key thing is, of course, that he and Putin, and one must say the Iranians and the North Koreans, increasingly seem to constitute a formal axis, the objective of which is to weaken the United States and transform the world order. As Xi Jinping said not so long ago to Putin, we have the chance to change things more than has been done in 100 years. Given what's at stake, that's a really ominous stance that they've taken. And the breakout of war in the Middle East, in addition to the war in Ukraine, raises naturally the question, will Asia be next? Will
Indeed.
China make a lunge thinking that the US is overstretched?
Indeed.
That's where my focus is increasingly.